All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Shauna Day, and I am a partner at Culterra Capital and a venture partner at Better Food Ventures. So welcome to our panel this morning discussing the future of ag tech and expanding on-farm profitability. I would like to take just a moment to have each one of the panelists introduce themselves, and then we'll get started with today's conversation.
Great. Hello. Hi. I'm Paul Mikesell, founder and CEO of Carbon Robotics. Shout out to all of our Carbon Robotics folks down here in the front row. Nice to see everybody today. We make the world's first and only laser weeder. We use very high-powered lasers and computer vision AI systems to see weeds in fields and then burn them out with high-powered lasers. No herbicides, no people in the fields, no cultivation if you don't want to. Run these machines over the field, kill all the weeds, just burns them up. They don't seed, they don't keep growing. They're gone and dead. We've been working on this for 4 years now. 3 years of just technological development, making stuff happen out there in the fields, and then started shipping our major version earlier this year and have sold a ton of machines. So what we're working on now is manufacturing capacity and scale. We are deployed currently all along the West Coast. If you're interested in learning more about the laser weeder, carbonrobotics.com or any of our fine folks down here in the row. And I see, so we have some salespeople here also that can help you get some orders going. And excited to be here today. Shauna, thank you. And that's Carbon Robotics.
Thanks, Paul. Gabe.
Yeah, so Gabe Sibley, founder and CEO of Verdant Robotics. What we do is very precise application of inputs, whether those are atoms on target or photons on target. We also spray photons, lasers. So that allows us to tend to a seed from the time it goes into the ground until the time it comes out. And that allows us to trace basically the outcomes and how we can guide them with different inputs to get to better outcomes, do things like drive larger size, higher yields, and really chase those agronomic insights that you get when you care for something at that specific level per fruit, per carrot. And that's really the goal, is that super focused, superhuman capability of tending to each individual plant. So if you want to know more about us, please visit verdantrobotics.com. We've been active for about 4 years as well. We run our product as a service, so that means that any farmer can sign up and see ROI from day one. So significant savings right out of the gate. No size limitations. It doesn't have to be big farms. It could be any size farm. Happy to work with really everybody.
Thanks, Gabe. And Bart.
Hi, my name is Bart Walker. I'm president of Pacific Ag Rentals, and why I'm up here with these two smart guys, I have no idea. But obviously they needed a court gesture, so I guess that's me. We've been in the agriculture business. Our family's been in the agriculture business for over 30 years here in the Salinas Valley. With Pacific Ag Rentals, we started with 2 tractors on my dad's kitchen table back in 2001. So we've been in business now for 21 years. Now we're in 7 states in Mexico and looking to go across the pond. So we've been really blessed with opportunities. We're an independent, so we'll go through and buy technologies. We'll buy implements. We'll buy tractors from different makes and manufacturers. I don't care if it's green or blue or purple. Tell me what shade of purple you want, and we'll get it there for you. And then we rent that technology. We rent that piece of equipment to people. And it's really a great opportunity for smaller farmers, small and mid-sized farmers, to have access to this technology that these guys are providing, because it's really expensive for some of these smaller guys. So if they can go through and rent that technology, that gives them a great opening to get into that. But like I said, we have about 3,500 pieces of equipment. We've got 250 employees, and really excited where our future is going to be going. So thank you for having me on the panel today.
I guess we'll bookend with 2 jesters here between these 2 very smart guys. So I'd like to first start off by talking a little bit about the how. I think we spend much of our time with technology talking about the features, the benefits, how to use the robots, but really, how do we implement them in the field? And the kind of conventional wisdom has said technology needs to fit into the workflow of the farm, which I think we all agree with. But in order for it to be more profitable, more successful, are there some things that farmers actually need to start to think about doing to shift that operational focus a little bit, to be more adaptive to some of the, especially the hardware in the field, the robotics in the field? So how do you guys think about, and I think each one of you could probably answer this, but how do growers need to start to think about shifting that operational mindset a little bit to be more adaptive?
I think
Paul.
with some of the machines that are coming out now, our stuff, because we have millimeter precision and can get in between any of the crops and get the weeds out of there, it means you can plant your crops more densely. And so we're not asking you to change your workflow, but we are opening up other opportunities to get higher yield counts by increasing density. If you want to use the machines for other things along the way in parallel, like thinning, that's another feature we're coming out with. So adding on multiple capabilities onto the same machine, I think there's an opportunity there for a lot better ROI, grower savings, profitability from higher yields. So I think the best machines are the ones that don't ask you to change your workflow, but instead offer other opportunities based on what you're already trying to do. So you get a machine out there into the field to do weed control, but now you got analytics, you can count, you can see stand count, you see weed pressure and weed densities, you can do things like thinning and get all kinds of other information. So that's the way I see it. Don't start off telling people how to farm. Start off adding a tool and then building value on top of that.
I would absolutely echo that this is just tools, right? The technology is just a tool that gives people additional capabilities. It gives you new powers, right? But it's not some magic thing. And it really can't force people to change their workflow. I think the decision people want to make is how much are we going to save? What kind of profitability are we going to look at? And it needs to work. So farmers are show me folks, and these machines have to do that job. But if it requires people to retool and restaff or change the way they're planting or change the way they're irrigating, I don't think that's going to work out. So the technology needs to meet farming where it's at today and deliver value. And I mean, it's kind of no nonsense stuff, right? The real opportunities down the road, when we apply computation to agriculture, like many disciplines where computation has come in and really revolutionized a field, it will happen in outdoor agriculture too. So today we see the tip of the iceberg in terms of value around pay points like weeding or thinning. However, there's a lot more value to be had when we start to use that technology to unlock that new value. So that's money that doesn't exist today. It's new money under the sun. And that's really where the opportunity is.
I say there's a blend, and I see some farmers that look at, we've been doing the Robovator, which is automatic weeder, not like the laser thing, but we've had that for a while. We've been doing that for 7 years out in the field. Some farmers get it, they look at it, and they're like, yeah, it doesn't work, get rid of it. And I'm like, no, you have to be patient with it, and you do have to change it a little bit, how you do, what you do, if you want to get the best out of the technology. And I'm not saying that's going to be with them, but with us, we needed to have the farmer get the bed a little flatter, get the bed a little bit neater in order for these knives, in order to work through there. So I think there's a little bit of blending. You have to have, and really the farmer has to assign somebody to be the tech guy to go out there and kind of help watch this and help monitor all this new technology that's coming out. So yeah, you don't have to change, but I think you have to blend in with the technology if you want to get the most out of that technology.
There's one thing that I'm curious about, and that's the planning. So much of farming, split-second decisions that you make in the field. But when you've got, a big robotic implement or a big automated implement, do you have to spend more time planning what you're going to do in the field before you get into the field? Or can you still have that flexibility of sort of split-second or split-minute decision-making?
Yeah, I think you got to be flexible, right? Obviously, we're outdoors in places that change really rapidly. So you have to be adaptable and able to move quickly. And for us, because we run as a service, we integrate tightly with farm manager and field operations. And so we need to tie in with irrigation schedules and things like that. But that's just sort of normal ag operations. I'm the technologist in the business. The better half of my business is a farmer, and there's no way I would have gone into this business without him, right? Because he has run farming at the largest scales. And so that experience allows him to be nimble and to do that work.
Paul, from an evolutionary standpoint, we've kind of seen a shift or an increasing number of companies move from sort of full automation into maybe tractor-pulled implements. What do you think is driving this?
Yeah, a couple of things. So I think everybody knows Cal OSHA is not so fond of autonomy in the field. That's part of it. Part of it is the other things on the farm are not tied into any kind of system of discoverability. And so some of the issues that we ran into with things like locations of center pivots. So if you're driving an autonomous machine through the field, you're on a center pivot, and that pivot's swinging around, it's coming around from the other side. You need to be able to know that that's happening well in advance of when it's going to get anywhere near your machine or to get out of the field. So I think in order to get full autonomy, first of all, we need growers to decide that that's an important aspect. And if And currently that hasn't been the case, so that's why we aren't focusing on it. But let's say that let's just suppose we want to get to that world where everything's completely autonomous. We need to have everything on the field be in a system where these machines are letting each other know what they're doing, including things like center pivots, including things like trucks and stuff like that. So I think there's a long way to go. It's not as important to the growers right now. We adapted based on feedback and making sure that laser weeding got out there and was giving people value there. I think there's a lot more discovery to be had in that direction.
I'm going to add on maybe a little bit of a philosophical question for Gabe and Paul here. Tell me a little bit about the decision to pursue a multifunctional sort of robotic automation system versus nailing one thing like weeding, really being hyper-focused on one aspect. And here we should have some interesting comments because we've got two different approaches, so I'm curious.
Yeah, I mean, we started with expertise in computer vision and robotics, and then the lasers was a side effect of exploring all the other things that were possible. And so it was really that discovery that we could kill weeds that led us going down this route of working with farmers to understand what else they wanted. So the things you see our machines doing is an evolution of working with growers. It's not something we decided to do ahead of time. And I think that's just generally important. I think the number one thing the best indicator in any machinery, robotic industry are the machines in the field, whatever that means. If you're talking about UAVs, construction equipment, warehouse automation, in particular in agriculture, you got to be in the field. And so all of these things come as a side effect of working with growers and seeing what's happening, what's working, and what's possible from there.
I mean, we looked at it from a perspective, similarly, we went on a listening tour for 6 months trying to figure out what we should do, just talking to farmers, what would be the best action we could perform. It was very clear you had to perform an action. People were not interested in a data play, and people were not interested in autonomy. I got a team full of roboticists, and our strategy is autonomy last, because that's not actually where you bring the value. The value comes from the intelligence that's in the implement behind the vehicle. So when we arrived at the ability to spray with millimeter precision so we could put a BB of pollen on an apple blossom as we drove by, and then park a BB on the lateral blossoms to make sure that they don't become pregnant and thereby individuate an apple cluster and grow larger apples, we started to recognize that there was just this superpower around spraying, and spraying is this massive canvas. It's really one thing, but allows you to do so much. Herbicides, fungicides, insecticides, nutrients, biologicals, just this huge canvas. All you do is change the chemicals and the software. And so you end up with this general purpose piece of hardware that can address all sorts of things, and all of it delivers value through massive amounts of savings on labor and inputs, but also through shifting and finding better growing policies that lead to better outcomes, more profitability. And so that larger canvas was very attractive because now you've got this multi-purpose tool, and it turns out it's really easy to make it multi-crop. So we went from staring sideways at apples to working in carrots in about 2 weeks. We just trained new computer vision models and said go. And so that generality actually was really powerful. And just the canvas, you can't fertilize with knives and lasers. You just can't do it. And you can't pollinate either, but you can with atoms on target. And so that was attractive for us.
So I think it's tempting to see these sort of really sophisticated automation systems deployed in big operations today. Bart, I'm curious, you see, and here in the audience today, we've got a lot of different sizes of operators, from very large to smaller, very specialized. How is this technology going to be deployed in this smaller scale? Like, where do you see this over the next 12 to 24 months? And maybe it's not the larger sort of systems, maybe it's smaller systems, but what are the smaller growers? How are they going to access this type of new technology?
Yeah, I think the smaller growers are really going to look at what their neighbors are doing, what their larger farmers are doing, and either try and share that equipment with them or try and come rent it from a company such as ours to go through and do that. And I think, we've tried everything with the RoboVator. We came out first, I thought, man, this is such a great idea. People are just going to buy these off the hook. So I tried selling them. We're just going to sell these. Nobody knocked on our door. I'm like, crap, that didn't work. Okay, we're gonna rent them. That didn't work. So he said, okay, we're gonna provide it as a service. And then, yes, everybody raised their hand. We want to do that because they didn't want to mess with it. They didn't want to have to deal with it, and they didn't have that guy in the org chart. So they had the irrigator and he had the farmer. And there's nobody in the middle, nobody that plays Xbox, the young kid that can go through and understand what's happening with technology. And I think as these smaller farmers become medium-sized farmers, they go through and understand that we're going to need that service. Whether I outsource that service or I have that service, I need to have a tech guy on my side that can help me understand this stuff. You ask any farmer out there, do you need more data? And they're going to tell you no. They have terabytes of data. They don't need data, they need information. They want to say, show me the signal in all of the noise, and from that, let me know what to do. And better yet, why don't you do that for me? So I think that there's a transition that's happening with that, but I think a farmer really is going to have access to someone, whether that be a trusted advisor or with one of these guys, to partner up with to say, hey, how can we really get a return per acre? Because that's what we're looking to do. We're trying to lower our costs, trying to increase our return. So how do we do that with using these technologies? And if we can't do that using these technologies, if it's better just calling up a labor contractor and saying, go weed lot 4 for me, and hang up the phone and they're done, that's pretty easy. So we all have to compete with that. You know, what is the farmer's next best alternative? And we have to provide a better alternative that hopefully in the end saves the money.
I'm glad you brought that up. So with field automation, is there a different set of performance metrics? Is there a different way to measure ROI that growers in the audience should be thinking about?
Like I said, we have a lot of different data points right now, but there's not a level playing platform that tells them what's happening. A farmer wants to know right now, what is my water cost? What is my seed cost? What is my fertilizer cost? Not at the end of the year. They want to know daily. In fact, they want to on their watch or on their iPad and see what's happening so they can make changes game day, right? They can make changes day of and either increase fertilizer, decrease fertilizer, and see the impact for that. And at this point, everybody has their own data sets, especially the manufacturers have their own data sets. We can talk about that later, but still, I think until we get that common platform, like we've done with the computer systems and some of the tractors, you're not going to see really adoption by the farmers, because right now it looks just like a bunch of noise. My thoughts.
Gabe, Paul, what do you guys think about ROI, and how do you talk to your grower customers about measuring performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so we've done a lot of field trials before we did our production version, and just comparison, we did a bunch of A/B tests where it was 1/2 weeding crew, 1/2 laser weeding, 1/2 herbicide spray, 1/2 laser weeding. We did 3 years of this stuff. So the ROI really, the demonstration of the ROI came from that. And so working with the farmers to find out how much we had saved, that's where we got our numbers from. So we've quoted a bunch of this 80% number. We've heard this from multiple growers that we saved them 80% on their weed control costs. That's how we got there, by just working with them. We do sell the machines directly. That's our primary business. We do it that way because the growers have their own procedures and policies for how they're trying to do things. And in every case, they're the ones who make that kind of game time decision about what needs to go where. And so we want to support them in doing that, but let them make those decisions. And there's a bit of so this is why we're not focusing on the as a service model, because if you're doing things as a service, there's an implication that the service provider is making some extra margin on that. You must be, otherwise you don't have a business. And we'd rather let the grower make that extra money. We'd rather let the growers get the extra value from the machinery instead of a third-party service organization. And I understand that for smaller growers, that makes a lot of sense. For a company like ours, we're going as fast as we can and selling machines as quickly as possible. So we'll wind up doing that through partnerships. But I think it's really good that all of these tools are coming out and that growers have more options, and I think that's kind of what you're hearing through the panels here.
Gabe, you've taken a little different approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we really have to recognize that it's early days, right? It's like 1950s and we just invented the transistor, right? We're not gonna see the personal computer until the 80s, right? And so partnerships and collaboration to go discover the value together, fundamental, right? That's how we're actually gonna accelerate that discovery. And also, the stuff we're building today, if we just drop off the keys and walk away, it's gonna be a paperweight in a year. Technology is shifting and moving really quickly. And so people need to have, I think, skin in the game to deliver to a guarantee. We'll remove this percentage of the weeds, or we'll remove, not hit this percentage of the crop. It's really important. That also means that you're shoulder to shoulder together trying to find that value. Because whether the business model is sales or as a service or a lease back or some other innovative business model, the really important thing is really getting the technologists together with the domain experts that understand growing, understand agronomy science, understand really what it means to get that job done. The collaboration is where we find the rest of the iceberg, and that's still ways off in the future. So I think the collaboration is how we accelerate the discovery, and that tends to lend itself to a service model.
So we've been talking a bit about business models, and I think it's sort of interesting, hopefully the audience will find it interesting as well, to think about venture capital and why venture capital has stepped into this market. And just a side note for Gabe, Verdant just announced a very large round of funding, so congratulations on that. So I think this is particularly timely to talk about the business models that work for the farmer, the business model that works for the company, but how does the venture capitalist play into that? Because let's be honest, for a lot of companies like both of yours, venture capital makes sense. For many, it doesn't make sense. But as you scale up innovation and sort of strive to become a bigger, trusted, company that's going to have some longevity, you need that capital. So how do we attract more of the right kind, whatever the right kind, but the right kind of capital into this market? And is it venture? Is it other sources? But I'd be curious to hear from both of you. How do we finance companies like this?
I think traditional VC, Silicon Valley VC, that's where most of the capital is, and I think ag tech needs access to that. And that's the route we've gone down. But there's a huge amount of education that needs to happen. The things that the venture capitalists think are important are not the same things as the growers, and so you really have to take them on that journey. Some of these folks make it through that and they understand, and some of them get totally lost. So you got to pick and choose who you're going to work with, and you got to figure that out quickly. We've had a lot of, I think I'll say, very interesting venture capital conversations, having to explain, what weeds are, right? We had a VC, in a call where we were describing our business model. He was really concerned because he saw this really serious problem with the way that we were doing things, which is this: if we sell a bunch of machines and we kill the weeds in farmers' fields, what's going to happen after we kill all the weeds? So at that point, you don't even know where to go, right? It's like, okay, well, maybe this is not the right partner for us. So there's a huge amount of education that needs to happen, but I think it's worth doing because, look, we don't need the VCs to fund another dog walking app, right? You got enough stuff going on your phone, who cares, right? We don't need any more Bitcoin, collapses to happen. We don't need any more cryptocurrency, new ways of doing the old kind of finance that falls under its own weight. We need real machines out in the field to make things better for growers. So I think it's happening. Congratulations to Gabe for his work in that direction. We've done a fair amount of fundraising on our own. The VCs are coming around, but agriculture generally is a great place to be. It's a lot of controlled environment. It's private land, so you know what's happening out there. Everything that's happening on the farm has a dollar value associated with it. So nothing's going on out there just for the heck of it. Everything has a dollar value associated with it. So if you build a machine that tackles one of the very serious problems, you can immediately understand what that ROI is going to be. So agriculture is a great place, but there's got to be a lot of venture capital education that goes on.
Gabe, what do you think? Well, what do you want the growers in the room to know about venture capital?
Yeah, I think for them, investing in ag is hard. It's not going to have an immediate SaaS multiple that, flips in 12 to 18 months, and they've gotten greedy on those things over the last 20 years. I do think that times have changed. I think the way the world's shaping up now, we've got a lot more scarcity, a lot more global competition, and we basically have to get serious around food production efficiency, food production security, and a lot of that comes down to brass tacks, can you make things work? And so business models that make growers money and deliver on that efficiency are really going to help. So I think that the VC community is starting to see that. At least some folks are waking up to it. Obviously, ag is huge. It's like 5% of world GDP. And automation in this space is a preordained fact. It's coming. No 5-year-old said, I want to grow up and crawl in a field and pick weeds. That's not a job anybody ever said they want to do. And so as we start to enable tools that, basically emancipate people from that work, that brings a heck of a lot of efficiencies.
You know what helps though? Actually, what really helps is growers being vocal about what they want and what they see. Because that's part of the education. So I'm talking about, I know a lot of farmers like Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, et cetera, and we found that incredibly valuable. Podcasts are great. So I think if you have an opportunity to share your story and it's going to go out there, I think you should take that opportunity because that helps educate the VCs, that helps bring money into this world, that helps us innovate and build more things.
Great. All right, we've talked about funding the models, but the ecosystem, I think, is equally important. So Bart, I'm going to ask you, because you kind of have a unique view on this, given your dealer perspective. What is needed to really align, from a dealer's perspective, both the incentives and the collaboration, the scale in this market? Like, what do you need? What needs to go both ways between the dealers and the tech companies themselves?
We're an independent. We're not a John Deere dealer, Fendt dealer, Fab. We just go out and we buy things and we go out and we rent those out. And I think if you listen to, John Deere's latest comments, and they were to in the next 10 years, they want 10% of the revenue stream, their revenue stream, coming from subscription services. So where does that come from? It comes from you guys. It comes from the farmers. And I think everybody, all the manufacturers, my thoughts on it, the manufacturers are trying to have an ecosystem like this. It's going to be their ecosystem. Gabe's stuff is horrible until it has John Deere on it. Then all of a sudden it's awesome, right? And I think we can have that, Pacific Ag Rentals, we can have that open conversation with saying, no, his stuff is awesome and Paul's stuff is awesome. I like both of them and I think both of them can work. You don't buy them through me, buy them through these guys. I think when we start to have open conversations instead of these hey, be in my ecosystem and buy all my stuff and that's it, don't buy anything else. Farmers don't like that. Some farmers like driving red tractors and that's okay, right? Some people want to have lasers, that's okay. Let's go out and support that, but let's start having conversations where we talk together. It's not my technology. It's not his technology or his technology. It's our technology. How do we get better working as a team to do this and not be locked into an ecosystem so I can help your investors and help your stockholders meeting? That's interesting, but how can we get back to the return for the farmer? If we don't have that, these guys aren't going to go out and buy this technology. It looks cool. I love what Gabe does, and I love the lasers, but if it's not going in there and saving them time or money, they're not going to adopt to that. So I really hope that at some point, the John Deere dealers of the world start to open up their mind on this. I don't see that happening, but if they did and open their mind on this to say, hey, what kind of systems does Fendt have? Can we put those in our ecosystem so we can have everything on one screen so I can see my Carbon Robotics laser, I can see where my employees are, I can see where my water truck is, and I can see where Verdant is at. If that's all in one app, and that's what we've been working on for the last 2 years, we're demoing it with 2 customers right now, where it plugs into the computer system so everybody can have that JD Link-like experience no matter what color it is. And I think that's where we're going to get penetration in technology, is when we are a lot more open about it, like these guys have been talking about. Let's share ideas. Let's work collaboratively. That's how it's going to happen. All ships rise in a rising tide. Not my ship, not his ship. All ships rise. Yeah. And I think if we have that thought process going into it, I think that's where you're going to get penetration with technology.
That's pretty scary if John Deere is trying to subscription service their way into a new business model, because what's going to happen. It's going to be like the heated seats in the BMW, right? It's going to be driving the tractor in the field, hot day. You want to turn on the AC, $12, right? Right? So I'm worried about that,
I am too, and that's why there's a big change coming in agriculture. I see same thing that happened in the construction industry 20 years ago when everybody used to have their own backhoe. Now they went to United Rentals and they're renting everything. And I see the same thing happening. They're going to be less brand centric. That latest data that just came out, farmers are 30% less brand centric than they were last year. I think you're going to see a continuing trend in that, and I hope that forces these big manufacturers to open up their hand. I don't see that happening, but I hope it does.
I'm going to stick with you for just a moment here, Bart, and think for your business, where do you see your model in the next 5 years? Is it more remote work? Is it more, what's changing in your business and where is that going?
being the visionary of the company, not the implementer, but the visionary, so I have the fun part. We're actually going out and looking at autonomy because we have to look at 1, 3, 5 years from now. I think autonomy is going to be a lot closer than people think. And we're also working with fuel cell and hydrogen technology. We're going on a trip next week to Germany to go talk with people about that, about autonomous vehicles and about hydrogen. So I think that's where our mindset is at, looking at the future of agriculture. But it's also having open conversations when we're at meetings like this, to have open conversations with Gabe and open conversations with Paul and saying, hey, this is the stuff we're working on. Do you guys have something that can help us make the point of the spear sharper? We'll pay you guys, we'll partner, whatever. All ships rise. Let's go through and do that. So I think that's where, I think it's going to be more grassroots brought up than big infrastructure down for technology.
So we've spent a lot of time talking about hardware and automation in the field, but I want to sort of shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit more about software, and just kind of, what are the tools out there that you guys are seeing that are working, maybe that haven't worked as well, and really thinking about productivity, thinking about profitability. What software is either there, we should be thinking about adopting it more, or we need to move a little bit further and we need to have some more innovation done on the software side?
I like this idea about the sort of open ecosystem. Where are all your machines? What are they doing? One pane of glass, as they say, to see where everything is. I do worry about, there was some hint of this earlier, somebody said, I do worry about all these companies that are saying they're going to go out and grab a bunch of data and then tell you how to farm. I think that's been a failure. There's new ones that come up every day. They don't seem to provide any value because they're just showing you stuff, I do think there is value to be had on top of a machine that's already there that can show you things that it already knows. We're seeing that. I think Gabe's probably seeing that the information we gather as a side effect of the work we're already doing is informative and helpful. But to just deploy something on the field, take pictures, and then show you highlights, I think that model has basically failed. It's a simple model for VCs, right? Because it's software as a service. But I think that people are missing not talking to growers and not understanding what they actually want. So I would lean more towards, on the software side, integration in the farm rather than data analytics. Insights are great if you can get them, but just showing a bunch of data is useless. So that's kind of my perspective. Open platforms, open systems, see what's happening.
I mean, I really do think software is going to continue to eat the world. It has absolutely revolutionized every industry that it's touched. And so, Google indexes every web page in the world, and all the world's librarians could not do that job, right? It's a job for a computer. It's just in their wheelhouse. They can multiply numbers faster than we can. We're just not something we're made to do. And they can count every carrot in a field, they can count every weed, they can count every apple, and they can track it over time. And that's just something that, we're just never gonna do. Once you have that ability to digitize something, you can use it to drive value. You can give that tool to an agronomist. And it's like they're a doctor in the early 20th century, and they're the first person with the x-ray machine. What are they gonna do? And so it's the farmer and the agronomist with these new technologies that are going to go discover the value. They're the ones with the domain expertise and the knowledge. And this is just a new tool to find value. But that value can be pretty massive, like it has been in every industry. So I think we should expect to see, once you enable search and comparison and correlation and machine learning and analyzing that data, not just to have data for data's purposes, but to find the information, and then really to let the farmer go execute the action that brings the value. It's going to be massive. I think we actually don't understand how massive yet. We see the tip of the iceberg, and so I think it's incredibly valuable. And it's all integrated, and there's a lot of software, and yeah, it's complicated, but it more than pays for itself.
Yeah, I would say Amazon knows exactly what I want to buy when I get out of here. They have a deck on me. They have a deck on you too, because why? I'm a data generator, right? We don't have a lot of data generators out in the field in order to start to make a map, right? They don't know how to advertise to ag yet because they don't have enough data points. we're working on that. These guys are two examples of that, building data generators to get out there and build a deck. Google has an ag deck, Microsoft, Amazon Business Services, they all have ag decks. They want to know how to get ag in a box, how to take this farming that we do here and ship it to Africa and make this a global thing. But they have to get data first. And right now, those digital data points are between the farmer's ears. And you have to get that out, digitize it, and then we can start to say, okay, now let's look at efficiencies. How can we go through and make farmers better at what they do by having these digital inputs? I think that's where it has to go to.
Okay, well, I'm going to challenge each of you a little bit, and we're going to put a bow on this conversation. We're going to give the audience what they really want, a taste of what's available today and what do we see in the future. So we're going to kind of merge those two themes. But I'd like each one of you to, if you can, kind of be specific. What do you think everybody that's in this audience today should be looking at least? And it's ready for showtime, and the technology, is commercially scalable and ready for them to trial. And what do you see coming in the future that really excites you? And maybe it's 2 years, maybe it's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, but give them a little glimpse of what's ready for prime time today and what's in the future that excites you.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so our laser weeders are ready for prime time today. We're building those as fast as we can. We got a lot of them out there in the field. We're continuing to expand across the United States. Brett and I were looking at some maps the other day of what we have coming up, what we deployed this year, what we have coming up next year and the following year, because we're already selling stuff into 2024 at this point. And so that's ready to go today. I think I like this idea about getting more data points. All of this information is making it into our systems, but making sure that the growers have access to it in a way that is insightful and gives them some action to take instead of just, oh, here's some information for you. I like the idea of just generally more ag tech stuff getting out there in the world. I think it's great for the ecosystem. The more tools and the more options the growers have, the better. I'm obviously very proud of the lasers. It's worked incredibly well. There's basically no crop input, so killing weeds with as fine a density as you want. So I'm pretty excited for what we're doing. And I look forward to everything else that's coming down the road.
We talk about process improvement and process transformation. The process improvement is where we work with a farmer to do a job that needs to be done today that everybody's already paying for, so everybody understands the cost center, everybody understands the value. Let's go save a bunch of money on weeding, let's go save a bunch of money on thinning. That's really important, and that's where the conversation begins. And those things are live today. We're doing hundreds of acres a week, and that's scaling very rapidly, basically as quickly as we can deploy machines. That really, again, is the tip of the iceberg. Process transformation, where we start to figure out how to bump yields, figure out how to grow larger produce, figure out how to trace nutrition and market that downstream. So much value to be had. And every grower we've worked with, we have found something new. That, oh my gosh, imagine if you could do this. And so that's what's coming in the future is, new profitability, additional income that just wasn't there before. That's what I'm excited about. The benefits from things like weeding and microfertilization, that's here today, but there's a lot more value coming down the pipeline that's exciting.
I think right now weeding is obviously something that everybody should look at. You can zap them, you can whap them, you can shoot them, you can spray them, you can hoe them, lots of different opportunities that are out there right now, lots of different opportunities for you to rent, to buy, to get it as a service. I'd say I'd definitely look into trying that. As far as what's coming down the future, we were just talking about regulatory stuff here a little bit ago, and I think what is really important for all of the farmers to start to collectively get around is this carbon sequestration and looking at how can the farmers get money, not tomorrow, but right now. How can they get money right now for doing two things that are protecting the earth, and that is creating oxygen and sucking up CO2. We do that when we grow. Why aren't farmers getting paid for that? And I think if we can start working on that, that will get farmers a little bit more excited about this carbon sequestration thing and why we need to do that, and don't take away my SUV, but there's a lot of credits that could be coming back. So I think if futuristically, I really think we should be able to do that, and with technology, with software, get that information. That's going to be in the future. I think autonomy is in the future. Hydrogen, like I told you before, I love hydrogen. I think batteries are interesting, but out on the farm, you have no way to recharge those. right? Unless you run a copper wire this big down the middle for 10 acres, and some tweaker is going to see that and say, man, that's a week's worth of tweaking right there. Let's cut that up, right? So it's not going to happen. I'm not going to put a windmill out there. It's not going to work. So I think hydrogen is where it's going to be at, and those are the technologies that we're looking at next month.
Boy, I love to end a panel on some laughs, so that's good. Thank you, Art. I think we have time for maybe one, maybe two questions, but does anybody have a question in the audience? We've got a couple. All right, I think I saw this hand first.
Gabe, your technology, to finish up what Mark was talking about, and carbon credits, can your data collecting measure the amount of oxygen that's given off by transpiration?
We have some studies that we're trying to look at, and we don't know the answer to it, but we know that it can. Way that we can measure impact now, for instance, we use 95% less suppress when we use it to organically weed. And so you have to produce 95% less. And so you can look at things like fertilizer, where it's similar. When you produce something, a lot less of it, that costs energy to create, you can measure the carbon footprint of that. It also, these technologies, these super precise technologies, they allow us to do things that keep the nutrition in the soil, right? And now you can look at how you're not releasing that back out, keep the intercropping and the cover cropping going. So there's a bunch of practices that don't work at scale traditionally that can work at scale because of the super precise automation and the ability to focus on very small things and then do that at scale. And so there is absolutely going to be a massive impact on carbon footprint because of that.
As well as sustainability, correct?
That's right. Well, it's got to even be better, right?
Don, real quick, we'll take one more.
I'd like to know if Bert's going to run for governor.
Hear, hear.
I can't because I'm married and I have some girlfriends that are mad at me, so I can't. I'm sorry about that.
That's a great question to end on, Don. Thank you.
Where does this stuff come from?
Just going to shoot from the hip. She said shoot from the hip. I'm shooting from the hip.
Well, thank you to this esteemed panel. Gabe, Paul, Bart, you've been great today, and thank you to the audience for joining us. So please join me in a round of applause for them.
You should still run.